So this is Dr. Pyne, and he teaches here. Some of you may know him. And he's going to talk for us about Wittgenstein.
Wittgenstein.
Awesome. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, a philosophical demonstration. Hi, left hand. I love you. We have known each other for a long time, and I have never given you anything, and it's your birthday tomorrow, so here, happy birthday. Why, thank you, right hand. I love you too.
That right hand goes to a strip club.
Yeah. Now, did my right hand give my left hand a gift? Was that a gift transaction?
Do you have multiple personalities?
No, no, it's just me.
So one of them alien limb syndrome kind
Nope.
of deals?
No, no. Was that a gift transaction?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it depends.
Or why not?
on the definition of it.
Why is that not a gift transaction?
It depends.
I mean, money changed hands.
It changed your hands.
Because they're both my hands.
Yeah, it depends on your definition of identity.
I think that's the right answer. It's not a gift transaction because they're both my hands. And you can't give yourself a gift. Not literally. You can't give yourself a gift. There are certain, and this is a very Wittgensteinian point. And this is Wittgensteinian or Wittgensteinian. I used to say Wittgensteinian. It's a very Wittgensteinian point. There are certain things you just can't do by yourself. No sniggering, please.
I like it.
What other things can't you do by yourself? Wittgenstein claims, and this is sort of the private language argument. Well, this is the claim for which the private language argument is an argument. You can't mean anything by yourself. When we mean things to each other, we do not do so by virtue of anything internal to us. As individuals. Three. Meanings are not rules. So, in philosophical investigations and as other post-structuralist works, I think there's a particular picture of language and thought, largely identified with Descartes, that dies its final death in Wittgenstein. And I'd just like to go through and what it is and how it dies. Meanings can't be, it's just on the Cartesian kind of internalist picture, each of us has a private language, each of us has meanings are internally represented. You know, it's even Locke calls them ideas specifically. And when we hear a word, then we associate that word with that private meaning of ours. Wittgenstein argues that picture. Wittgenstein argues in paragraphs 200 through 260 or so of philosophical investigations that picture cannot be right. Can you give yourself a rule? Can you have this sort of little private construction? Let's suppose, he gives this example. Let's suppose I keep a private diary just in my mind. And I'm particularly interested in, let's say, a particular kind of itch I get on my nose. And I want to know every time I get that itch. So I have this little internal kind of blackboard or whiteboard in my mind. And then I have a calendar on it, times and days and so forth. And every time I feel that particular kind of itch, call it S. I put an S, I mark an S in the square for that time of day. An S itch. So I give the meaning of S itch to myself. I accomplish this through the way we usually assign meanings, through ostensive definition. Where we go, that is a goose. But in this case, we don't have anything public to point to. We go kind of, that itch, that sensation that I'm having, that's what I'm going to refer to by an S sensation. The problem is, how do I know that I mean the same itch every time I use it? I must, if I assign the rule, that itch, I use S to refer to instances of that itch. Now, it's the possibility of doing that, the coherence of doing that is what Wittgenstein is questioning. If our defining S as that itch is to be successful, the rule has got to work, right? It must establish the connection between the sign S and the itch, and that connection must persist. I impress, he says, the connection on myself. This process brings it about that I remember the connection correctly in the future. The rule then is used to distinguish correct applications of S from mistaken ones. But in such a case, Wittgenstein says, I have no criterion of correctness. I can never tell whether I remembered it right. There is no way I can check. But a rule for which there is no way to judge whether it is being correctly or incorrectly applied cannot function as a rule for grounding standards of correctness or incorrectness of whatever the rule is for. And this is the famous passage from paragraph 268 of Investigations. One would like to say, whatever is going to seem right to me is right. And that only means here we can't talk about right. Therefore, I cannot define anything even to myself, let alone anyone else, by merely attending to something and making a mark, unless this episode has the appropriate consequences, and those consequences cannot be private. They must be public. Now, we can imagine someone making an objection to Wittgenstein here, saying, you, Wittgenstein, have not succeeded in showing us that such private rules are incoherent. You have succeeded only in reminding us of the point, which none of us doubted, which was never a thesis in dispute, that our memory is fallible. it's still, this justification is fallible, but even a fallible justification can serve as a justification. Most of our justifications, in fact, are fallible, and they're still justifications. Wittgenstein responds, but justification consists in appealing to something independent. But then the objector could say, well, surely I can appeal from one memory to another. For instance, I could appeal to a mental image to confirm my memory. Couldn't I, as I sometimes try to do, I will try to refer to a particular visual image of the bus schedule to see whether I've gotten the bus, whether I remember the bus departure time right. Isn't that the same thing? No, Wittgenstein says. For this process has got to produce a memory which is actually correct. If the mental image of the timetable could not itself be trusted for correctness, how could it confirm the correctness of the first memory? It's as if someone were to buy several copies of the morning paper to assure himself that what it said was true. So, the notion of a private language, then, he takes to be incoherent. The real target, though, of Wittgenstein's private language argument is this. 2. The fact which makes it true that an individual is following a rule is not and cannot be a fact about the individual himself, whether that fact is private to the individual or not. And here, Wittgenstein imagines, let's say you are an anthropologist and you go into the jungle, along with Pyne. And instead of encountering rabbits, you encounter this society that has no games in it. You encounter 2 tribesmen, Tonto and Squanto, and you have to imagine. Let's say, has anyone seen The Gods Must Be Crazy, where someone threw the Coke bottle out of the sky? And so let's say someone threw this chessboard out of a plane into this, into the jungle. And there are Tonto and Squanto, and they've got this chessboard on a stump, and they've got the pieces all lined up. And you encounter 2 of the tribesmen sitting at this chessboard, moving chess pieces around. Now, they are moving the chess pieces in such a way as to be consistent with the rules of chess. Their moving the pieces is even accompanied, let's suppose, by the sort of mental states. Let's say they've been, smoking the shrubbery, and they're getting these hallucinations as they're moving the chess pieces around. And so these hallucinations are producing within them these interior monologues. And it just so happens that these are the interior monologues that correspond to the actual interior monologues taking place in actual chess players as they are making exactly those moves. We see Tonto make a move that puts Squanto's king in check. Right? This is accompanied by Tonto's shrieks of triumph, Squanto's outburst of chagrin, plus a Squantonian disposition to move his king away from that square. Are these 2 playing chess? What grounds do we have for saying so, right? The moves are consistent with chess. The interior monologues going on in their minds, it is, let's say, it is to them exactly as it is to real chess players when they are making the corresponding moves. Are they playing chess?
Wouldn't that be a matter of intentionality, whether they're intending to play chess or not? Because if they were intending to play chess, then they'd be playing chess. But it sounds like under these circumstances, since they're not intending
How do
to
you
play chess...
intend to play chess? Isn't that a private mental episode too?
Well,
Yeah, like you know the rules of chess, and so you're playing by those rules. So it sounds like if you're playing by those rules, then it would be chess. But if you're not intending to play chess, you're just moving pieces arbitrarily. It happens, of course.
So it's the intention to comply with the rules of chess that makes it chess.
Possibly, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do they intend to like actually be playing a game with each other, and the game in which they are playing happens to be
Well,
chess? Or
then no concept of a game.
no concept of game. Okay. Then I guess no.
They're just moving they're just moving these pieces around on this board.
Right. Okay.
They may not, they may be intending to do something else entirely, or they think they're doing something else entirely, or they have no thinking about it at all.
Well, I would say that the concept of playing chess includes within it the concept of playing a game, of competition of some sort, and so if they don't have that, they're not playing chess.
Yeah, but they have the interior monologues going. Let's say they have the interior monologues that exactly go on in the minds of chess players when they are making that move. Except it's it's like they're having dreams or hallucinations or something.
But if I were like to shoot a gun out the window, I mean just aimlessly, I don't intend to hit somebody, but say it does and I kill them, I think society would say that I killed that person.
So these are kind of negligent chess players?
Yeah, it's called negligent homicide.
You're- Yeah.
It sounds like you're kind of equivocating though between like the laws of society and what you're just arbitrarily doing, or like or there's an ethical value to it. Like, I don't know. It seems hard to be like, oh, since I was just shooting this way, then it means the same thing as in the court of law. I would be guilty of killing somebody.
At the same time, I don't see why they couldn't be capable of playing negligent chess, but I would personally think that it would have to be accompanied by the intention to play a game, even if they don't know that game is chess.
Is even intending to comply with the rule enough? Okay?
I think that in both the example of a game of chess and of gift giving, there has to be a contract, some kind of spoken contract between two people, like we are going to play this game together, or I'm going to give you a gift and I'm going to receive a gift.
Yeah.
There's some kind of agreement, even if it's unspoken, even if it's just, gestures, some kind of agreement you come to through language.
Yeah, there can be variations on it. There can be granddad chess, where you're playing with your 8-year-old grandson, and you're not trying to win.
They're playing chess.
No,
Like,
no.
they're playing chess. Like, even if they may not know what we call chess, and they may not know the rules of it, they're still following it the exact same way that we do. They're still having the same feels as regular chess players are doing. That's like if I go out and I have no concept of basketball, but I get a ball and I start bouncing it around on the court, and I start playing basketball, but I have no concept of what it is, and I start shooting. People are going to say, he's playing basketball. Yes, I'm playing basketball.
Other people are going, well, what is the you're playing basket, if there's nobody else around, what is the you're playing basketball making fact there? Andrew has just pointed out it would be your intention. You have no intention to play basketball. You cannot form the intention of playing basketball,
Right.
unless you have the same interior monologue as a basketball player, but it's coming to you as a bizarre dream or something.
But you're still playing basketball.
No.
Well, that's precisely what's at issue.
No, but
I don't.
it's exactly the same as the people that invent basketball. I mean, basketball wasn't invented with rules in mind, maybe not. But like, let's say some guys just got together and started bouncing around and started throwing it at a hoop. Bam, basketball's invented. What he's doing is exactly the same as the people that invented basketball are doing. And the people that invented basketball play basketball.
Aren't they
Yeah,
just,
Veronica?
aren't they just like making a game? I mean, they're not like making as in like making a new game, but they're just making a game instead of playing a game. They're following all the motions. They're not really personally intending to do anything. The competition isn't really between them. Like when I want to play chess, it's because I want to like kill your whole army, not because like for any other reason.
I have played Tegwar. I played the game of Tegwar with my grandson in cards. You ever know what Tegwar is? That's the exciting game without any rules. And I make him up as I go along, and he always loses. Well, that's a Kanabi. I mean, that's an exception. Then, in that case, the ace is low, right? And therefore I win. That's not a game.
My only perceived sort of issue would be if we're applying this to something that is scientific fact, like gravity.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was going to say that raises an issue, because I may not be trying to give an example of gravity working, because I jump and I fall back down, but I am providing an example of gravity. Even though that's not my intention, when it comes to scientific fact, you really kind of all...
Oh, we'll get to something even more rigid than physics. We'll get to addition.
Oh, cool.
Oh, she's doing it.
Yes.
I agree. I think they're playing chess. And I don't think that they have to intend to play chess.
I think
So there's some
I
sort
don't
of...
think they have to kill each other.
So there's some
either.
sort of platonic entity, which is the chess, which is chess itself,
I
and as
think,
long as you...
I think that if they're having the thoughts that go along with chess, if they're...
But the thoughts are completely
Oh.
adventitious.
It doesn't matter though.
The thoughts are just coming in as bizarre dreams.
But how do you know that the chess player's thoughts aren't coming in as bizarre dreams? Like,
Well,
no,
that would be
really.
Wittgenstein's point too. That the thoughts that the chess player is having have no particular connection to. The thoughts that the chess player are having when they are playing chess is not the chess game, is not the chess playing making fact.
Exactly.
I
They're
mean-
playing chess.
No, they're not. Well, that's not, they may be playing chess, but the thoughts that they are having is not the chess playing making fact about it. Wittgenstein says you have to look elsewhere than inside the players or the participants themselves.
I'm wondering if we can make this analogous to this hypothetical. This kind of goes to the people that are saying that they aren't playing chess. Imagine, like she said earlier, I'm going to modify it a little bit. She's waving around a gun, loaded gun, and she pulls the trigger because of it. And when she pulls the trigger, the bullet flies and it hits a person that was intending to blow himself up along with other groups of other people around him. Should this person be considered a hero? Will we consider this person a hero or not? Because they didn't have the intention to do this, they just did it. So I figured we could make this analogous to it, since to the same case as he's putting us.
Let's say, in Andrew's case, the feeling of intention comes as this bizarre dream. So it's just, I thought it was bad enough dealing with Descartes. Some people here want to be Platonists about chess. That these Tonto and Squanto are sort of like the slave boy in Meno. Who was just dimly remembering geometry as he's doing it, and it is all going to come back to him between lives.
At the same time that I don't think that they should have to intend to play chess, to be playing chess, I also kind of think that chess is the sort of communal activity of which the community of people who are aware of what chess is have agreed that chess is a game. It's something you play in competition. So if the competition is not there, they're not playing chess.
That hasn't always
Yeah, they're
been.
playing granddad chess, which is the kind of chess I play.
But then there's a problem with is it always a game? Has it always been a game? Or was it once a tool to teach war strategies to people who would someday be leaders?
Well, it can be that too, but at the moment, we don't know it as a game.
Yeah, I don't think I think concepts evolve.
I have no particular interest in helping my 13-year-old grandson conquer the world.
It's like X-Men.
Is he going to be a benevolent ruler?
Wittgenstein's answer is this. This is our paradox, he says. This is paragraph 200. No course of action could be determined by a rule, because every course of action can be made out to accord with the rule. The answer was, if everything can be made out to accord with the rule, it can also be made out to conflict with it. So your intention to comply with the rules of chess is not the chess playing making fact, Wittgenstein says. there can be neither accord nor conflict here. Andrew?
Yeah, I was actually recently talking to somebody about intentionality and basically a similar concept, like you do your whole Barsoom thing,
Yeah.
Barsoom. And for me, there's like this difference between the intentionality of what you were trying to do, whether it was describe, life on Mars, or whether it's trying to play chess, but there's this factor of, in explaining it to somebody, like if you were explaining, like I was playing chess, like there's the intentionality of being honest and accurately portraying what you were doing. And it seems like in both scenarios, whether you knew or didn't know you were playing chess, you were accurately trying to portray what you were doing. So it would only be after the fact that you realized you were playing chess that a different sort of intentionality would arise, and that would be whether you knew you were trying to play chess or not. So under both circumstances, there's the intentionality of saying what was accurately happening, portraying it properly. So it's almost like there's like two different tiers of intentionality. Does that make sense?
Wittgenstein is going to say, you don't get to decide whether you're intending to play chess or not.
Okay.
That's not up to you. You may think you're intending.
Yeah.
You may intend to think you're complying with the rule. Wittgenstein makes a lot of the idea of going on as before. He gives this example. 98, 99, 100, 102, 104, 100. Wait a minute. You were counting before. You should go on as before. Well, I was going on as before. 80, isn't that right? 98, 97, 98, 99, 102, 104, 198, 200, 208, 216. I was going on as before. How are we going to? That's any rule that you have is going to be only imperfectly projectable. What does Wittgenstein mean by the odd remark he makes that no course of action can be determined by a rule because every course of action can be made out in accordance with the rule? Saul Kripke, in an essay called Wittgenstein on Rules in Private Language, gives this, I don't know if you've run into this before, this very challenging example. Adding. I put it up there. Let's say the largest number you have ever added was 57. So you're breaking new ground here. Crucial, on the standard view, it is by means of external symbolic representations, n plus m equals z. And my internal mental representations, including my intentions, that I grasp the rule for addition. Crucial to my grasp of the rule is this consideration. Though I myself have made only finitely many sums in the past, the rule determines my answer, for indefinitely many new sums I have never previously considered. So, $57 plus 68 equals 125. Let us suppose that there is a bizarre skeptic, sort of like the person who says 97, 98, 99, 102, 487, 9, 66, right? What is there's the right answer. And you boggle, right? And you say, no, wait a minute, that can't be right. And the bizarre skeptic asks, in your grasp of and your use of the rule you used, did you ever at any time, sounds like a lawyer, right? Did you ever at any time explicitly advert to the number 125 as the sum or as the correct sum? And you must respond, well, no, by hypothesis, since it's an addition problem larger than the largest addition problem I had ever yet done. I just went on as I did before. That is, as I did before with earlier and smaller addition problems. BS, our skeptic replies, well, how do you know you went on this before? You've never gone this far before. Maybe in the past, you have used plus and this sign. The old joke about why they do so well in arithmetic, in Catholic schools, because you should see they get, the last guy that got one on, they nailed him onto the plus sign. See what they do when you make mistakes in addition. You said, actually, you have been using this function. It's not plus, it's quas. And quas is equals x plus y equals x plus y if, and it's a number greater than or equal to 57, and y is less than or equal to 57. X plus y is 5 if x or y is greater than 57. Were you adding or were you quadding the whole time before? Perhaps you've always been quadding and you just called it adding. And maybe through mind-altering drugs or, your cerebellum being influenced by effusions of black bile or something, you have forgotten this fact. Now, Kripke says, if the skeptic proposes his hypothesis sincerely, obviously he's crazy. This is a bizarre hypothesis. It's absolutely wild. While it indubitably is, no doubt it is false. But if it is false, there must be some fact about my past usage you can cite to refute it. In computing 68 plus 57, as I do, I don't just make an unjustified leap in the dark. I follow directions I previously gave myself that uniquely determined that in this new instance, I should say 125. But what are these directions? By hypothesis, I never explicitly told myself that I should say 125 in this very instance, because I've never encountered this instance before. Nor can I say that I should simply do the same thing I always did, because in order to do the same thing I always did, I would already have to know I was adding rather than cladding. And that's precisely the question at issue. Doing the same thing as I did before does not discriminate between adding and cladding, since the two rules give the same results for every case in the past. So the issue here is not mathematics. Descartes raised a similar question, didn't he, in Meditations? You know, he raised the skeptical hypothesis about, well, are you sure that 2 plus 2 is 4? Maybe every time you add those two numbers together, actually 2 plus 2 is 5. It's just that every time you add 2 plus 2 in the past, the effusions of black bile in your cerebellum have caused you to come up with 4 instead. Every time you go to make an addition problem, you make a mistake, right? I mean, I've made mistakes in I've made mistakes balancing my checkbook. In fact, I've done it, I balanced my checkbook twice just to make sure I was right and made the same mistake both times. That's not the question that the bizarre skeptic here is posing. The issue is not whether our mathematical knowledge is clear and distinct or certain. After all, even if we always make a mistake when we add 2 plus 2, that's still a mistake in addition. The bizarre skeptic is asking for the basis of our certainty that we are doing addition rather than something else. Okay? So the bizarre skeptic's challenge then takes 2 forms. You got it? Is there any fact about my mental state by which I meant plus quas 2. What are my grounds that what are my grounds for being confident that I should answer 125 If the bizarre skeptic is right, the concept of meaning and intending one function rather than another will make no sense. There's no fact about my past history. There's nothing that was ever in my mind or in my external behavior that establishes that I meant plus rather than quas. But if this is so, then there can be no fact about which function I meant in the past. And if there can be no fact about which function I meant in the past, there can be none in the present either. Kripke says, Wittgenstein has developed here a new form of skepticism. At least Descartes was certain of the contents and features of his own introspective states. A Cartesian could think, well, I can be sure just by checking my own internal states that it seems to me that I'm adding. Wittgenstein's quaddition hypothesis takes away, or Kripke's quaddition hypothesis takes away even that certainty. We can't distinguish it's seeming to me as if I'm adding from it's seeming to me as if I'm cladding. Thus, Kripke says, Wittgenstein has invented a new form of skepticism. Personally, I'm inclined to regard it as the most radical and original skeptical problem that philosophy has seen to date, one that only a highly unusual cast of mind could have produced. Well, if anyone knows anything about Wittgenstein's biography, highly unusual cast of mind would only begin to describe it. Wittgenstein's private language argument is not the skeptical hypothesis, according to Kripke. The private language argument is his solution to this skeptical hypothesis. The main problem is not how can we show a private language to be impossible? How can we show any language or any adding to be possible? And so Kripke cites Hume. There is a skeptical solution to this skeptical argument. Recall Hume on induction. There is no justification in pure reason for induction. There is no fact about the world or fact about our ratiocinative processes or capacities. There is no proof a priori that event A caused event B. Nevertheless, our ordinary beliefs, our ordinary practices in which causal claims and inductions occur are all justified. They are justified because induction and causal claims do not need or require the justification that the skeptic has shown to be untrue. Even God were to look at two events, A and B alone, he would not be able to see any other connection than that one event precedes the other and is regularly correlated with events of that kind. Only when event A and B are subsumed under events and related by the generalization, all events are followed by B events, can A be said to cause B. Another example, show God a spotted owl and a Norway rat. Could even God tell, just in virtue of facts about the individual animals, which one was endangered and which one wasn't? Norway rats are not endangered. Of course not. Being endangered is not something an animal can be just by itself. It is a pattern property or a property only of groups of animals. Hume's argument might be called the impossibility of private causation, called the spotted owl example, the impossibility of private endangerment. For Wittgenstein, the impossibility of a private language emerges as a corollary of Wittgenstein's skeptical solution to the skeptical paradox. Wittgenstein agrees that there is no such fact as the fact in virtue of which I, taken individually, mean plus and not plus. What does it mean for us individually to be adding rather than cladding? As part of the way we live, we are often called upon to add. Balance, checkbooks, itemized deductions, what have you. Thus, we are often called to reflect on whether on what we did was addition and whether we have added correctly. Our community adopts a particular view of addition. In doing so, it adopts conditionals like, if one is following the addition rule, then in adding 68 and 57, one must arrive at 125. And what must there means, we mark you down if you don't. We do not consider you, a competent adder, and if you're in Catholic school, we nail you up on that big plus sign in the front of the classroom. When the community adopts a particular conditional like this, it also accepts its contraposed form. If in adding 68 and 57 one does not arrive at 125, then one is not following the addition rule. The failure of an individual to respond correctly leads the community to suppose that he is not following the rule. In short, many human practices involve following rules, and they just work as a matter of fact. So what is the fact that we are adding rather than quadding? It is the bare fact that we have the approval of our society for the results. And that's all. Nothing going on in anyone's head is the adding making fact. Nothing going on in anyone's head is the chess playing making fact. So one could, in another society where they quadded instead of added, why don't we quad? I mean, is there a quaddition function? You've all had, some of you had Philosophy 160. Is there a quaddition function? Of course there is. Right? You just defined it. Right? If you can define it consistently, the function exists, right? It just has no earthly practical use. That's why we don't have it. So, do you see the point? That is that. And as for addition, so for language. Wittgenstein's picture, then, of a language community is not a community that follows rules or that follows conventions. The best picture, I think, of a language community as it follows from Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations is a language community as an enormous jazz ensemble, right? And we're all jamming. And what we're trying to do is harmonize and riff off what the people around us are doing, right? And so it develops, and we keep riffing off each other, and the language changes. Is there any pure Cartesian or Platonic idea of meaning? No, there isn't. There just isn't. Now, what Wittgenstein is, and what you're not saying, they are not saying that what makes it true that 68 plus 57 equals 125 is the community's agreement that it's true, right? Wittgenstein is not giving us a theory of mathematical truth. Right? He's giving us a theory of what it means for us in any particular community to add, to use the particular function. That is, we comply with what the rest of the community. We read the community's expectations often, we comply with those expectations, and that's all we're doing. And that is all, and that all it means to say that we add. That's Wittgenstein. Is there an alternative? Is there an alternative to the private language argument as a solution to the skeptical doubt? I am, myself, as a philosopher of language, quite dissatisfied with Wittgenstein's conclusion. But I'm not prepared to go all Descartes in response. James Ross at Pennsylvania, at the University of Pennsylvania, argues that there is an alternative here. According to Ross, human understanding and human thought seems in principle to be determinate in ways that Wittgenstein's and Kripke's doubt does not allow for. Adding is not following a rule. Adding is realizing a particular form in thought. Our thinking that, say, 68 plus 57 equals 125 is thinking of a definite, abstract form, addition. What's required here for Ross's solution is the reality of universal forms. So our thinking that 68 plus 57 is 125 is not thinking something indeterminate among other possible forms, other possible functions. Such thinking must be of abstract forms. If I add two numbers and not just happen to write down the correct sum, then I think in the form x plus y equals z. Adding is a form of thought which gives a sum for any suitable array of numbers. If I do something which gives the right output, but which cannot by its form determine the right outcome, for any case whatever, then I am not really adding. There is a great difference between adding, even incorrectly, and doing something else, like guessing, estimating, or following a rule or an algorithm. Adding is the manifestation of an understanding and ability which is being exercised in the particular case. When a person has acquired such an ability, it is not always transparent from successful answers. It's not going to be transparent to the possessor of the ability himself. And it can be exhibited even in mistakes. I was really adding. I just added wrong. It's a perfectly sensible locution. So if we are realizing the addition function in our thought, or the modus ponens function in our reasoning, this realization does not consist in an array of inputs and outputs, even if counterfactually the inputs and outputs would be correctly paired. So, well, what about, one of the, as Ross puts it, the jewels of 20th century analytic philosophy are the various arguments for certain kinds of relativism based on underdetermination considerations, right? The Grube-Lean paradox of Goodman, conceptual relativity of Putnam, the incompleteness theorem of Gödel, all of those, and Wittgenstein's private language argument is one of those. So Ross's alternative is basically Aristotelian realism. There are substantial forms, and we realize the substantial forms in our thought. Now, this is calculated to give the greatest conceivable offense, right, to most analytic philosophers. And so one response would be, well, we are never really adding, right? We are just simulating addition. Pure addition is as much an idealization as, perfectly elastic collisions and so forth. Yeah?
I'm not sure I understand what Ross is saying. Is he saying like there is a fact of the matter regarding whether you were adding or quadding because there is a mental state associated with it?
That our thought realizes forms,
Right.
and that those form and that we can be assured that we are adding rather than quadding.
See, I'm not sure how that follows out. Like, I can accept there is a fact of the matter regarding whether I was adding or quadding, but that doesn't mean I know that. That doesn't mean I am aware of the mental state that I had when I was
No, he's not saying that. That we are realizing some determinate form when we are adding. Since he's a realist about this, we can be open to skeptical doubts. His cerebellum can be, afflicted by effusions of black bile as well. But there is a fact of the matter,
Yeah.
is what is what he's entertaining.
Okay.
Ross's argument here has a particular form. And it is the form of a paradigm case argument. I've gone on too long.
No.
Should we just leave it there?
No, keep going.
Keep going.
We don't have lives.
We still got like 40 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we have to laugh.
You people are every bit as pathetic as me.
I'm trying to figure out what you're saying.
Yeah, we.
Okay.
I'm enjoying it.
A paradigm case argument. I've become interested in paradigm case arguments. I think they're becoming actually influential again. I see philosophers like John Campbell and Barry Stroud and Ross and others using paradigm case arguments again. Here's what they look like. Let's take an uncontroversial example of claim. The claim may be controversial, right? But it is an example of a particular kind of claim. When I get 125 as the answer to 68 plus 57, I am adding. Right? That is a claim. The objector says, well, how can you be sure you're adding? The following state of affairs holds. I'm in my right mind. The conditions for such cogitation, it's not, as an addition problem, it's not all that difficult, right? The conditions for such cogitation are satisfied. My brain has been scanned, revealing an absence of, of black bile in the cerebellum. There is no evil genius trying to deceive me. No hologram generators are present. I've just, everything about me has tested normal. Given this situation, I respond that I am justified in claiming that I am adding. The idea behind the argument is this. This is a paradigm case of adding. That is, it is so indisputable a case of adding that if this is not a case of adding, then nothing is. So the case is related to the meaning of the expression adding in such a way that it is just the sort of case that we call adding. If we wanted to teach someone the meaning of adding, we could point him to this case. If this does not count as adding, then the expression has no application. If this is exactly what we call adding, exactly is the situation in which we could succeed in teaching someone the meaning of adding, then in saying that it is a case of adding, we cannot fail to say something true. If this is a case in which we might teach the meaning of X, it cannot fail to be a case of X. If the skeptic denies that anyone is ever in the situation X, if the skeptic denies that anyone ever really adds, the skeptic is in the paradoxical situation of refusing to apply the expression adding to the very situation to which the expression refers. And if the expression adding has no application, then the skeptic's attempt to deny that we ever add will fail to constitute a denial that we ever add. That is, the skeptic's denial that the expression applies to the cases for which it is paradigmatically used renders his skepticism self-undermining. The denial robs him of the capacity to state what it is that he is denying, thus rendering his denial and his skepticism empty. The skeptic is reduced to presupposing that the expression has application in order to assert that it does not. Yeah, that's the sort of thing I'm claiming doesn't exist and can't happen. Game over. Skeptic loses. That's precisely an example of what I claim there are no examples of. To say that we may not know whether we are adding when we are is exactly to grant that we might perform the determinate thought function, and thus to grant the whole argument. Similarly, to say we do not know whether we ever perform a formally determinate function is to say either we are in a cognitive state, uncertainty as to whether we are really adding, although we do not experience uncertainty when we produce sums, or B, we are always mistaken when we are certain we are adding, because at most we simulate. Now, the first option concedes the main argument, because it postulates uncertainty when we actually do add. The second postulates mistakes about what we are doing, and thus concedes the main argument, that there are such definite functions for which the only locus must be in thought. And the other answer will leave the pure function without any logical space. When we are certain we are adding, we are always wrong. But that reasoning will then hold for whatever we do. We are always wrong about what we think we are doing, when we think we are doing something definite enough to be a pure function. To suppose we can think definitely enough about functions to be wrong about what we are doing concedes the main argument again. Now the doubt has spread to every pure function, asserting, questioning, objecting, stating, reporting, as well as adding, squaring, and conjoining. The doubt has even spread to include the very repeating of what I take to be, mistakenly, to be my argument, and to make it indefinite whether you are actually denying or disputing my conclusion. Moreover, the cost extends to particular pure functions specified by content, adding 3 and 3, judging that Greeks are courageous, doubting whether philosophy is scientific, reading a paper, thinking that the speaker is nuts. Such an epidemic of doubt, without any effect on one's own certainty, must involve mistake. That's the argument. The argument is that so paradigm case arguments are simply arguments that the doubt in this case is self-undermining.
So the idea is that 57 plus 68 equals 125 is a paradigm case of adding.
Yeah.
I think I get paradigm case arguments, and I think I can be okay with that. But I don't see how that's a paradigm case, and I don't see how it isn't subject to cladding. Like I don't see how the skeptics, the bizarre skeptics thing doesn't still apply, right? I don't see how it self-undermines.
I think it self-undermines when you bring up other examples and the skeptic keeps saying like, oh, well that's still plotting, or how do you know? And then after a while you're like, okay, so I'm going to come up with all these examples. You're going to say, I still don't know. And then we're just not even talking about adding anymore. Now you're just questioning like...
Well, the difficulty is that how is the skeptic using the word adding in order to express his skeptical doubt?
Well, isn't that the point? you never know whether you're adding or you're cladding.
Mm-hmm.
So, and thus, adding or cladding doesn't apply in your mind. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's the trick bag that the paradigm case argument catches the skeptic in.
I don't see how it's caught the skeptic though. Because I can see how a paradigm case argument could apply to probably a great many things and be very powerful, but here, the skeptic's point that that the language making thing does not lie in your mind still applies. Like there's something I'm missing here.
The skeptic, that's, I think a similar argument works for lots of anti-realist claims.
Sure.
I think it's sort of, if you want a paradigm case, better than adding would be blue.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of Paulio, like as you were describing it, like this is blue, or if you doubt this is blue, then you just undermine yourself, yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Are you troubled about this addition problem is too difficult to constitute a paradigm case?
No, I think it's missing the bizarre skeptic's point to call it a paradigm case. Well, I mean,
Because the paradigm case appeals to the community, right?
does it, wait, sorry?
A paradigm case appeals to the community. This is how you would teach
Okay.
the use of the word.
Oh, okay. It's a different use of, it's a different kind of appeal to the community than the bizarre skeptics, though.
Yes, it is.
I like the bizarre skeptics better.
You like the bizarre skeptics better? That there is no fact of the matter that we're adding or quadding?
Not within
It's,
your mind.
there's no fact of the matter that would mean blue by blue, conjunction by conjunction.
Not that you can know yourself within your mind a priori, there isn't. Like, there might be a fact of the matter, and except that there's a mental state associated with adding, and that if that obtains, then you're adding, not quadding. But I don't have access to that.
So
I might be quadding for all I know.
So you prefer the relation to community standards rather than the relation to abstract forms
Yes.
to ground your use of the term.
Yes, I believe so. I'm not saying
Okay.
I'm a Platonist, I'm saying that that language is a communal thing. Quadding, addition is a communal thing.
Well, I'm not a Platonist either, but but I'm an Aristotelian, and so and it seems to me that the only alternative to being a kind of behaviorist skeptic mystic, a la Wittgenstein, and is to be an Aristotelian.
I like being a behavioralist skeptic mystic though. I think that's cool.
All the cool kids are behavioralists, skeptic mystic.
I guess the more fundamental thing here is that I'm not really seeing the problem with Wittgenstein then. What is the objection? I guess that's a problem.
The objection again, well, Wittgenstein is proposing a solution to the bizarre skeptic's doubt,
Yeah,
and Ross is proposing an alternate solution.
okay,
The bizarre skeptic's doubt, the Rossian, the paradigm case solution to the bizarre skeptic's doubt says that the bizarre skeptic's doubt is self-undermining.
right, okay. I'm not sure, okay, I can accept that, I guess. I'm not sure I agree, but I can accept that that's his response to the bizarre skeptic and the Wittgenstein.
The only thing I can respond to that at this point would be to say, sit down and reflect on the force of that.
Okay.
So what it is there's just, okay, so there's Wittgenstein's account and Ross's account,
Yeah.
and those are the two.
Those seem to me, I mean, certainly not the only, I mean, full on, pedal to the metal Platonism is still, I mean, there are living, breathing Platonists around, right?
And what you're saying is we should adopt Ross just because Wittgenstein's is self-undermining.
Because, yeah, I think we are engaged in forms of thought that cannot have the properties that the private language argument attributes to our thought. Or as Ross says, it's way too expensive.
How so though? Like, I'm not seeing what's expensive about it.
You lose all grasp on what we're saying.
Well,
The old, it's the old joke about two behaviorists, meeting each other in the quad. Hi, how am I? Fine. Am I fine too?
yeah, but that sounds perfectly fine to me. I'm willing to accept that, so I guess I'm not seeing the need to resort
You know,
to.
I just don't see, I don't see, for one thing, how you can be a scientific realist and be that kind of Wittgensteinian. And remember what, the other thing that Wittgenstein was famous for here was persistent and systematic, and I think this is becoming more influential as time goes on. It's an interesting feature of Wittgenstein, maybe I'll come back and talk about this, is he was for a while kind of the only living, breathing analytic philosopher who was also just opposed down to the ground to the enterprise of vulgar scientism and philosophy. You know, that's not the only path to knowledge. And he was prepared, he was prepared to say that, Wittgenstein was prepared to say, we learn something real and genuine about what it is to be human by listening to a piece of music. I mean, Ravel wrote his piano concerto for the left hand for his brother. Paul Wittgenstein, who was a concert pianist who lost his arm in World War I. So, and he came from an artistic family. His sister was painted by Gustav Klimt. So he was an anti-science. He was au courant, but he didn't think that philosophy was a way of finding things out that was restricted only to scientific modes of thought. And so in the end, I don't see how you can be a scientific realist and hold Wittgenstein's views on meaning, because the standards of rightness or wrongness for your scientific theories are going to be community standards. They're not going to be connection to the external world that's there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking if you accept Wittgenstein's views, if there was a whole community, if we found a planet where the whole planet did quadding instead of adding, we would have to say, okay, yeah, they're doing mathematics right, and wouldn't we want to be able to say that there would be? I don't know.
No, I think the description you gave, Kate, was correct. That's a planet where they quad instead of add.
Yeah, and
But in
so
order
they're
to,
not wrong.
yeah, but
right?
in
We
order
would
to
have
be
say
able
they're
to
not
say that,
wrong. Yeah.
right, you need to you need to use the English word add to refer to the function of adding.
So we wouldn't even be able to say that we wouldn't even be able to talk about the difference between the way that we do math and we do math.
Could be like,
That's expensive.
Can you translate it?
Hmm?
You can't translate how people translate language for between the worlds between adding and quadding.
No, you couldn't even talk about the difference.
but you could, what I understand is why can't you say they're wrong? Because you can point to a pile of rocks and be like, no, dude, count that shit out one by one and you're wrong.
But then the other place would be like, no, you're wrong. They'll try to do their own thing and say the same thing.
5 rocks doesn't look like 125 rocks.
What if a whole
Maybe it does
community
if you
thinks that
quad.
way?
But it's not the quantity, it's the number itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's kind of a cottage industry going around and trying to figure out what practice is there, what sort of bizarre practice could a society have in which quadding would give you the right answer.
It's only under 56. They're good up to 56 rocks.
After that is 5 all the way
Yeah,
down.
no, you're wrong, dude.
Everything is now 5.
There are a number of languages that are like
56
that, actually,
million.
they can't add more than 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, many.
Yeah, they're wrong though.
No, they do have a perfectly reasonable ways of counting, or what they do is they match instead of count. So they have a bunch of sheep, more than 4, so they can't count them, but they do have enough rocks that they can match up with sheep. So they have this rock
so
pile and they have sheep, and they
So they're
have-
inefficient.
Yep.
Okay. We're kind of wrong.
Yeah. The word for rock, the word for pebble in Latin is calculus. So calculating is pebbling. Picking up a rock for each sheep, for each sheep. Then you have to, but then you have to hump this bag of rocks around all day, and when the sheep come back, then there's going to be as many sheep as rocks.
Leave it by the gate and
Or maybe you could just have the sheep carry the
If
rock.
someone steals a rock, then they may as well have stolen the sheep.
Well, see, then if one sheep gets lost, and his rock gets lost too.
that's so much easier.
And you're not with one correspondent.
So what did mathematics mean to Wittgenstein? Did he just not
He is,
care
as I
about-
said, he is not giving a theory of mathematical truth. he's giving a theory of what it means, what is the fact. He's giving a view on what fact it is in virtue of which we can be said to be adding. And that fact is that we get the sums right by the standards of our community. Not that we get the right addition answer. Right? Ross is going to say what makes the fact that we add is that we are in fact our practice realizes the form of adding. What Wittgenstein is going to say is we get approval, praise and prizes, from our community for getting the answers we do. That's the fact in virtue of which we can be said to be good adders or adders in our community. There is no particular connection. There's a cognitive connection between our practice of adding and the addition function in Wittgenstein. And Ross is hypothesizing a cognitive connection. We have cognitive access to the addition function. The way we have cognitive access to the modus ponens function when we reason.
Does it have to be that functions are real forms, or could it just be that numbers are real forms? Like, why do we, if numbers are real, why do we need the functions to be real? Like, wouldn't the functions just be real by virtue of the numbers? I don't.
How could you get functions from virtue? How could you get functions from virtue of the numbers?
Are we talking about words,
the number-
or are we
that's
talking
what
about,
Wittgenstein does.
like,
Yeah, I don't
energy?
Yeah.
Do you mean that
Like-
it just by the nature of there being like one thing and another thing, if you count the whole thing, there are two things?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to express it, but.
It's just confusing because, like, if I were to see the number 2, I would have no concept of the value of 2. And then if you had the number that looks like
I mean,
5,
do you have to see it for it to be real?
Well-
I mean, I'm.
Well, here's some numbers. 47, 3,647, 762, 9.
Yeah, I can't conceive of that.
And then there is the successor function.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. So we're not interested in numbers. What we are interested, or mathematical entities generally, or propositions generally,
Okay.
we are interested in the relations among them.
So just the.
And the relations among propositions are going to be consistency, inconsistency, entailment, independence. The relations among numbers are generally going to be described in virtue of functions. So that's what we're interested in.
So, I'm just trying to arbitrate things. I don't want to consent to too many things, but I feel like
We wouldn't, we can't have that debate.
I feel like I want to say that there is something real about mathematics. It doesn't, and we're not just happening to, be so lucky as to somehow be actually describing reality about mathematics. But I don't.
How would Bertrand Russell explain that? Because I remember he wrote this whole book about why 1 + 1 = 2, and he explained it thoroughly.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever tried to, have you ever tried to do that?
I hit my head against the wall. I couldn't understand it.
Have you ever tried to do that? Sum and Robinson arithmetic takes about 16 steps.
It's not so bad.
You done it?
Yes, I did that in 60.
Russell himself was a full-on Platonist,
He was awesome.
right?
I studied him. It's pretty weird.
Numbers are real.
Wait, Bertrand Russell was a Platonist?
what if I don't want to be a Platonist and I don't want to say that something is right just because society says it's right and they give me gifts for saying what they say is right?
Well, then you can be a right-thinking Aristotelian and say there are substantial forms. And that we have cognitive access to those substantial forms. And sometimes we can And sometimes we can be sure we do.
But but I don't believe in forms. Like, wait, what's the difference between substantial forms are forms that Aristotelian forms are different from Platonist forms? Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. That one.
I have two spiders, right?
Yeah.
There is something these two spiders both are. That's an existential quantification, and it is true. There is something both those spiders are.
Is the paradigm case argument a little bit like about what you talked about in metaphysics with exemplars and
With the what, Jim?
exemplars and the other one?
The what?
I can't remember very well. Like exemplars and the oh god, I cannot remember what it was. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know.
It's what are the conditions for the possibility of X argument? So paradigm case arguments are similar to transcendental deductions. This is why Mace hates it.
Okay.
Right? The conditions for the possibility of denying that we add
All right.
is that we use the word add correctly. Is that we use the word add to mean add.
Okay.
Therefore, there must be some uses of the word add which hook up to the addition function in the right way.
Okay.
All right. There was like 4 paradigm case arguments that you listed as being big ones. What were the ones that you listed in your lecture? But they were attached to like 4.
Well, do you know, for those of you who have had Philosophy 180 inflicted upon you, did you get Moore's argument for the external world?
Yeah.
This is my right hand, this is my left hand.
Yeah.
we totally did.
There's one version of that argument, that's a paradigm case argument.
Oh.
Right. This is a case of what we would use to teach the word seeing to people. Therefore, we're seeing a hand. Therefore, there must be some uses of seeing a hand which are true. But then there must be hands we see. Therefore, we cannot deny. Therefore, we cannot. The skeptic who raises the doubt that we ever see hands must use seeing hands in a way that connects up with seeing hands. So the skeptical doubt there is self-undermining.
I was like, one of the only things I got in my class because it was so simple.
Is it like saying Santa Claus does not exist?
It's also it's kind of the inverse of the Plato's beard argument too, isn't it? Yeah. The conditions for the possibility of saying that Santa Claus doesn't exist is that he does. So therefore, we cannot say that Santa Claus doesn't exist. Because in order for Santa Claus does not exist to be true, it would have to be about Santa Claus. And so then there's desperate search to find out what else that sentence could be about. That would make it fruitful for denying the existence of what we want to deny the existence of. I don't know a good solution to that problem.
I'm thinking of like, I can't remember what it's called either, but how about the scientific theories that are no longer considered to be true? Like, black pure mucus, whatever it is in your brain.
Yeah. The infusions of black bile in the cerebellum that causes
Yes, so.
that's out of the meditations.
And to demonstrate that, to provide evidence for that particular theory, I point to the way that a person is acting. Like Veronica is the way she is because of too much black bile in her cerebellum. And if I call that a paradigm case. Yeah, like if that doesn't demonstrate the evidence of black bile, then the way Veronica's acting, I don't know what will.
We cut our head
Is
open.
that? Well, we can do that.
Prove you wrong.
No, because you see, black bile also like evaporates on contact with oxygen. So you see.
Well, wait a
you don't get
second, I
this
mean,
Wait, how do we know science
Vacuum.
that doesn't
I mean,
exist?
are,
Cut it open.
We didn't have to cut it open, it was pop open.
but I mean, isn't that the problem of like the different types of existence? I mean,
There are no different types of existence.
well, like, I mean, Santa Claus, well, Santa Claus, like, 'cause what you're saying is Santa Claus exists because, like,
What are you referring to?
what? Because we're referring to him, right? But that's his only existence, you know, like the black bile, like, or my brain, I would like to think actually exists. Like, we can cut my head open and find it. What?
If you like your head, you can keep your head.
Okay, so we're gonna assume that I have a brain.
In a jar.
In a, oh,
You're gonna be the rat.
wherever it is. I mean, like, we can actually go, like, verify that, like, but we've just kind of made up Santa Claus and, like, he exists in that.
You're just, I mean, are you referring to like a type of logic system where there's like three-value logic system? I mean, you could do it that way. You could say that it's neither true nor false that Santa Claus exists.
No, he exists, like like you were talking about him, is what Pyne's saying, like, we're talking about him. Well, no, it's
trying to
like,
make sense of what you're saying.
like, I hear what Kia's saying, she's like, you know, like this black bile, like you're saying, you know, well,
I'm wondering
obviously.
if that's even an example of a paradigm case.
Well, it sounds like it, like, but why not?
Are you saying it exists as an idea? Like it can exist as an idea
No.
instead of really existing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Santa
That's
Claus,
what you're
I
saying?
think that he exists, I think so, but I was trying to, like, I was thinking about Kia's black bile.
But that's not what he is saying.
No, I know, but I heard what she was
That's an
saying.
example of a proposition, true or false, right?
What?
Both black bile and cerebellum don't exist. It's
But
just
she was
theory.
saying it as, like, as a paradigm case, like,
The reason why Veronica is the way she is because of this. And like, if that doesn't demonstrate to you. if
Black
that's-
bile or the cerebellum must definitely be involved.
Yes.
Time to pick your brain.
Right.
Well, it's about time.
5 minutes left. So,
Thank God, bye.
Thank
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.